I had big plans of shooting this whole video here, either here in the Bay or around the building here today, but that just didn't happen because today was nuts. Howdy, Jeff Bartsch here with Story Greenlight, where we're all about helping you tell the stories you care about the most. That's what we're all about, so if you're new to the channel, consider hitting the subscribe button and ring that bell so you don't miss a single video.
Hey there, furry butt.
When we're telling stories, it's really easy to send messages to our audience that we may not even realize that we're sending. Two specific ones. One that we think the audience is dumb, and the other that we think the audience is smart. Now, let's just say for the record, if we want to establish a long-lasting relationship with the audience, we need to tell them that we think they're smart and we need to behave like it. So here are 3 ways in your storytelling to tell your audience that they're smart. Tip number 1, explain but don't spoon feed. It's important when we're telling a story to set up the context and say what's actually going on, but don't take it too far, otherwise it just becomes insulting. Basically the way a lot of early reality television was when I was earlier on in my career, in the early 2000s, there was so much heavy-handed stuff that reality TV would do that was literally driven by executives saying to me, Jeff, we have to do this and this and this and this because we can't assume the audience understands anything. The audience is dumb. And I remember hearing that, I'm just like, well, that's kind of lame to think that about your audience, but okay. And so we would do things like, if we had a dramatic moment, character number 1 was over here and would say something dramatic, blah, 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 dramatic line. You'd get this really dramatic boom thing when you cut, because that means it's dramatic, you know. And then on the opposite side, when you get something that's funny, you have stuff like this. Character number 1 says something really funny, blah, 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 blah. Just this total ham-fisted, in-your-face, hey, listen sound effect that says, hey, this is funny, you have to laugh now. It's like, well, you know what? If the audience thinks it's funny, they will laugh. But it just got really old. It's a lot of stuff like that. It was far beyond just explaining what's going on. It was spoon-feeding. It's like, this is what you should think, you know? And it was bad. And frankly, I think a lot of that is why a lot of reality television went away, for which I'm glad. So there's that. Now, if you're doing story content or vlog content or something like that, it's pretty obvious how that applies. But if you're doing how-to or DIY content, it still applies. You need to strike a balance between explaining enough, but you don't want to explain every single little detail, every little stitch, every little screw, every little paint stroke. It's just, people get it. Tip number 2, to tell your audience that you think they're smart. Don't preach at them. My wife and I adopted our little son Levi 3 years ago. We took physical responsibility for him on day 2. We met his birth mother, who's white, and his birth father, who's black. And in the years since then, I've realized that being raised as a white man, I've never really had to even think about race. That's just always been a privilege that I've had just because of who I am. I'm like, you know what? I should probably figure out what life might be like for Levi as he grows up and what's actually happening with all this stuff. So I was listening to a book that sounded like it had some good things to say, but from the very opening of the book, I just could not get on board with it. Even though the author was saying a lot of stuff that I agreed with, just the way that he went about it was just incredibly, it was insulting, and I just couldn't latch onto it because all he was doing was he was starting with shoving his message down my throat. And frankly, that happens a lot of times in a lot of different areas. It's like when people really are passionate about something and they believe in it, it's really tempting to just start with the message that you want people to change their mind and just shove it down the people's throat. That 9 out of 10 times is not going to work. I will tell you, the only time that I really locked into this book was when the author started telling his own personal stories of how he had experienced racial relations growing up and how that shaped him. But then after he got done telling a couple small little stories, he just went right back to preaching at me. I'm just like, I can't, No, I'm done. I didn't even finish the book. I did a video talking about how story works with our brains and why it's such a big deal when it comes to connecting with our audience. I mean, it's one of the main ways we as human beings connect with each other at all. And so talking about this whole idea of race, I talked a little bit about my story and how my own views on things have begun to change when I start listening to the stories of other people who are living lives different than mine and what that means for me as I raise my son. So check that out here if that's something you're into. And in the meantime, if you have a message that's important to you with your content, start with a story, start with an explanation. Do not start just preaching right from the get-go. Tip number 3, to tell the audience that you think they're smart. Speak to things deeper than the surface. Now, like I said earlier, it is important to set context so people don't get confused, and it is important to do that in a way that doesn't spoon feed them. Now, here's the way to take that to the next level. For instance, if you are doing DIY or tutorial kind of stuff, people know what you're talking about. I mean, the surface is fairly obvious. So the way to more fully engage your audience and to honor them by making them make more mental connections in their brains is to add layers of story and emotion. For instance, I recently did a consultation with a gal with a large personal channel that's targeted towards moms. And she was saying, it's like, okay, so how, if I was to do a video on reorganizing the closet, how would I add extra layers to that? I mean, it seems pretty straightforward. And she's right. I mean, that surface thing is pretty obvious. I mean, and you could even show a progression. Like we talk about, the story shows a progression, like from horrible and messy, then you go through all the changing and the cleaning up and it ends up looking great like that. That shows a progression, but that's just the surface. So here's how to add elements underneath it. You talk about how you feel. You talk about the emotion of things and you say how you feel, how this mess makes you feel, why it is so important for you to make this happen, and then you can even complain in the middle about it. Oh, this is, what was I thinking? How did I let it get to this bad? And then when you get to the end, how do you feel now? That's a progression not only of an external change, that's a progression of an internal change, and that adds a whole extra layer to that otherwise regular clean up the closet video. And so let's go the opposite direction. Say you're a guy with an adventure channel and you're all about going out into the wilderness. That can be pretty cool all by itself, but if you want to add your backpacking trip or your four-wheeling trip or you're going kayaking out in the Colorado River out in the middle of nowhere or whatever, again, add the emotion. What are you thinking? What are you expecting? How are you feeling? How are you feeling in the middle when you get in the middle of challenges? And when you come to the end, how do you feel there? Same thing as the closet video. And of course, when you're telling story, you will always do yourself and your audience a huge favor by tying your surface level content to layers of symbolism and deeper core motivations underneath that. Which, as you know, if you've been around Story Greenlight for any amount of time, you know I'm talking about the thing under the thing. The surface is the thing, the layers of symbolism and meaning underneath it are the thing under the thing. But that's a whole different concept that goes beyond the scope of this video right here. If you want to learn more about that, which you totally should, it is incredibly powerful.
It actually blew my mind.
And if you use it correctly, it will connect your audience to you with emotional superglue. It is ridiculously cool. And you can check that out more by this playlist right here. And in the meantime, if this is helpful, hit the like button and remember, keep telling your stories because you matter, your message matters, and the world needs to hear what you have to say.